today to talk about our local history. And Marcel, can you tell me where you were born?
I was born in, we were living in Lactabonny, but we went to Winnipeg. And they got me there and brought me back.
Brought you back to St. George or back to Lactabonny?
Lactabonny.
Okay. And that's where you grew up, was Lactabonny, or part Winnipeg, part Lactabonny?
Yes, I grew up for the first 20 years there.
At Lactabonny?
Yeah, except for grade 11.
Okay.
The school burnt down, and I had to go to, I didn't have to go to Winnipeg, but my mother and dad were very old, and they wanted to live beside some of the kids in Norwood. That's what they did. And I went there, and I went to school, grade 11.
But did you do grade 12 back in Lactabonny then?
No, I started grade 12 and I went for 4 days.
Okay.
I had no money, and we were very, very poor.
You have more education than my father, so you're doing good. Do you know any stories about how your family first came to this area?
Well, I can start off right 300 years ago and go very quickly too, if you want. Well, the first guy is from Flanders Field in Belgium, and they came to the western part of the world, you might call it, and they just wherever they lived, I don't know, but they were in South America for a while, and then there was trouble in all those places, you know. So he got out of there, this one guy, and he came to, got on a boat, and he didn't know where he was going. He ended up in Acadia. And from there, they stayed there, and they married, and they got married to somebody, and everything went good for quite some years. And go right down to my dad. He's one of the outcomes of the marriage. And this has taken in quite a few years there. And my dad and mother lived in Prince Edward Island. They had lived in all through they kept on moving out further from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick to Prince Edward Island because of the problems with the English and the French were having wars. And there was actually 7 changes of the country, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then they stayed in a place called Bloomfield in Prince Edward Island for quite some time, and they decided to. There was a very, very sickness deal came along. They decided to go into the western part of the world, which was Manitoba. There was 5 brothers, and some of them had families, and they kept on. Well, one of my uncles was a school teacher, and wherever he went to be a school teacher, that's where they followed. And they stopped in a place called Mackinac on the what is it called?
Up by Dauphin.
Yeah, I thought that way, and so they. Let me think now. Oh my goodness, I forgot.
You had all 5 brothers that moved to Mackinac.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they stayed there in 1909. They got there. My family got there, and they stayed there till 1917. But it was just all rock and everything, you know. In 1917, my uncle, who was that school teacher again, he got a job in Launderville, out here in Launderville.
Okay.
And so, bang.
Everybody moved again.
Well, the 5, two of them went to California.
Oh, wow.
And 3 of them stayed with altogether, you know. And they went to, and then they stayed there, and you heard about the big cyclone in Launderville?
No.
Yeah, well, it was a big cyclone. Big school there, and the ticket was all made of lumber, not lumber, but logs, you know.
Yeah.
And it took it and went like that. And there was 40 kids in there. Nobody got touched even. Well, there was a chimney that broke down and it fell on top of the fella, and I knew him, that guy.
Okay.
And he ended up talking like this because of the, something on the
Injury.
injury. And they, from after the cyclone, they went to St. Boniface, because St. Boniface then was on the outskirts of
Yes.
Winnipeg, you know.
Yes.
And they stayed there for 6 years. And my uncle, he went to Alberta, and the other uncle, he stayed in Winnipeg. And my dad wanted to get back to this area. So they moved to Lac du Bonnet, and they bought a farm there, 13-15-10 East, mile and a half from the town.
Okay.
And they moved in there in 1927, and that was when I was born.
Okay.
And that's how we got to Lac du Bonnet. And we stayed there for till I was 20, and then I came to Pine Falls, except for the 1 year in Winnipeg for school. I came to Pine Falls, and then from Pine Falls to St. George.
So-
I made it a little longer than I thought I was going to.
How did your family make a living once they moved out to the Lac du Bonnet area?
How did they what?
How did they make a living once they moved out to the Lac du Bonnet
Farming.
area? Farming?
Farming, and he was a different farmer.
What kind of farmer? Was he a grain farmer, a cattle farmer?
Well, he was everything, but he wasn't very good at anything. And besides that, he was very deaf.
Okay.
And by the time quite a more after years, his left ear was completely gone, and his right ear had only 20%.
Oh, wow.
So that's the way it was.
So what were some of your first impressions and early experiences in this area?
Well, the early experience in this area, I lived I came at 20 years old. I went to Pine Falls. I was working in a restaurant, building. I was a carpenter's helper, and we built something on that. When that was all finished, I got a job at the town site, where I stayed for 42 years.
Wow.
And the life I lived from Lac du Bonnet, it was great in Lac du Bonnet too. And there and here, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's awesome.
I've had a very good life.
So can you describe the place you grew up and what it was like?
1927, we moved into it was terrible. The house was an old log house, you know, and it was very, very cold in there. And we stayed there for 10 years, but it was good too. All my brothers, and we had 12 in our family, but 3 I never met. But then it was a good place to live, you know, and we had fine. But after that, when I got to Pine Falls, I went back to Lac du Bonnet on weekends all the time.
Okay.
And by the time that let's say 2 years or something like that, when the girls got nicer in Pine Falls than in Lac du Bonnet, well, I just
Stop going to Lac du Bonnet.
stopped going to Lac du Bonnet.
So how has the area changed
Oh,
since then?
If you think back, when I first came here, there was no powerhouse at Pine Falls. And the river was like the voyageurs would have seen it.
Okay.
And I liked it so much that I walked all the way from here to Great Falls. Then I had somebody to take me back. But I didn't do it all following the river. I rode sometime.
Right.
And it was just a beautiful experience. to know that the water was gonna come up. And I guess you know how high it came up to you.
Not really. I'm not from here.
Well, 28, 30 feet.
Wow.
And right behind the church, there was an island, beautiful island. There was all kinds of stories. I got these stories, and I tend to see you about all that stuff. It was just a wonderful experience to go through all that.
Okay. So overall, what brought about the changes that you saw in the area? Was it the dams? Was it
Well, when I came, they were building the dam.
the one at Pine Falls?
No, not when I came, the one at Pine Falls. They were building the powerhouse.
Okay.
And so I remember when, I don't remember when I was actually a baby in 1927, and that was the first paper that went to the Manitoba Free Press, not the Winnipeg. So it's called the Manitoba Free Press now. And so that's what was your question?
What made the changes happen? Was it the dams being built?
I think it was the powerhouse.
Okay,
Yes, no, not the powerhouse, it was the dam.
the dam that made the changes.
Yeah, that was the biggest changes.
Okay,
But the mill was one of the terrific change. But I wasn't alive then. Before that.
right. But you could see the progression and the change.
Oh, it was wonderful.
It was a good thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So overall, what did people do for a living? Was there a general area that people worked, or was there a variety of things that they did?
A couple of hundred people working at the mill.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you had that much business and that much, you had all the added on business from the sides.
Right.
And that's what it was.
Okay. So do people do the same kind of work now?
Well, I don't know, but there's the only thing that I see that's really going good is the stores. And I don't see,
Because the mill has shut down,
no, it's shut down. And,
but the hydro is still there for the dams.
well,
and-
the hydro and the dam, that doesn't do much for the people, for work, you know. It's practically, it goes by itself.
Okay. So are there traditions that you have given up or changed over the years?
Traditions?
Yeah, things that you did on a regular basis, annually or whatever, that you used to do that you don't get to do anymore?
Well, one thing that I'd like to tell you about is, see those fingers?
Yep.
I lost them. And I was a good guitar player, and I didn't guitar after that.
That ruined that, did it?
That ruined that, but that just happened recently.
Yeah, I've had a chance to hear you play guitar.
Did you?
Yeah, here actually at the library.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Rod and I.
Yep.
Yeah, and the other things, what were you thinking of?
Well, just was there box socials? Was there
Oh, yeah.
picnic things? Was there, like, what kind of group activities were there in the community that maybe you did as a family or as a group of friends? Like, have those things changed over the
Well,
years?
Skiing was a great thing. I worked a long time at that, skiing. And there was other things around here. There was lots of things to do.
The outdoor stuff?
Outdoor stuff, yeah.
Okay. So, what places stand out most in your mind and why in this community?
Well, I think the thing that stood out in my mind a real lot was that change of the river. That river was just beautiful. And if you can just think now, there's a waterfalls, two waterfalls here, and there's what, 3 before you get to Mud Falls,
Mm-hmm.
then Great Falls. Well, I didn't see that before, Great Falls. they ran that in 1923.
Okay. So, what were some of your neighbors like back then?
Well, neighbors were always good, except for Beaujolais. No, not Beaujolais. Abenstein. That little old lady was a wonderful old lady, but her husband was a really dirty old man. And oh, it was, and she'd always want me to come in and eat something. They were from Germany,
Okay.
and that was really a different thing there.
And that was when you lived in Pine Falls?
No, Lactabani.
That was in Lactabani?
When I was growing up in Lactabani.
Okay.
What you want? Oh, you want Pine Falls?
Sure. Pine Falls, St. George, any of that?
Oh. The different things around here, well, of course, the water,
Mm-hmm.
and the people are so different now than they were before.
How so?
They're different in that they don't, sickness, COVID or whatever has caused all this, you know. But the problems they have that overtakes their thinking, I think. They just stay home now and that's just awful.
And how did it used to be?
Oh, great.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Very much a sense of community back then as
Sense
opposed
of
to,
community, sense of friends, sense of going out and seeing people,
right?
doing things together. No. But even in before COVID, things got a little bit different, but not like it has since.
Yeah, right.
Because, like I done a lot of music. I done a heck of a lot of music, and I there's an artist right there,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an artist right there. Do you know that I've painted 4 pictures,
Good for you.
and I got them at my house, and I got except for one. And the reason I haven't got them there anymore, the reason why I quit, is I was doing so many things. That's what the end result of this. I was doing so many things in life, you know, and I couldn't do them all, and I had to stop one, because painting takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell her, I found out I was a damn good painter, and I didn't even need to go further. But that's not the reason why. The reason why is the amount of time it took, and then music took an awful lot. Working on a ski club took an awful lot.
Mm-hmm.
There was just too many things to do, and I was involved in too much.
So, what stories or memories come to mind if you wanted to share one more thing?
Oh, there's so many. I know there's things I'd like to talk about, but I can't remember how they go. I can't remember.
That's okay.
But like snowmobiling, I done an awful lot of that.
Were you part of the group that went up to Dauphin? There was a
Yeah.
group of men that took a snowmobile trip up to Dauphin. Were you part of that?
I don't know. I can't remember Dauphin. Around there.
Okay. Yeah, it was up north. I remember that they had a display here.
The group that went all the way up to the lake.
Yes.
No, I didn't go with those.
Okay.
But I'll tell you, the group that I really wanted to go with, there's 2 men, and you had to have two.
Right, for safety.
So if your partner, something happened, you had to quit.
Yep.
And we were to go to Quebec City from here.
Snowmobiling.
Snowmobiling.
And you did this? No, but you wanted to.
I had a partner from the beaches,
Okay.
and he decided he wouldn't go.
Okay.
And I must have asked 50 people. I couldn't find a partner, and I couldn't go. And they went. See, a lot of people didn't want to pay all what it cost, you know. And like you drove your snowmobile all the way to Quebec City. You heard about the PUM, what is it called?
Banam Carnaval?
The carnival that.
Banam Carnaval.
Yeah. And that was what was going on, and they went to see all that. And then they hired somebody to take the snowmobiles back.
Oh, okay.
Like it was not, I could have gone, but I could only gone to part.
How long a trip was it?
Pardon me?
How long a trip did that take?
I don't know.
Okay, I just wondered if you knew from the other people that did it.
Well, I talked to them, oh yeah, a bunch of, but I can't remember the length.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for sharing your memories with us today.